All right, welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1979-82 carryover fall league. The draft is gotten underway, folks. We are going to have the first half of the first round in this video. We want to show you how we got to this point, though. In the draft, we, of course, have been through the keep waiver and retire. We found out everybody got their 128 keepers, waives, and retires. There was a trade carousel, and we had some nice little trades that occurred. And after the draft, we had, or after the carousel, we had some more trades. We had wrapped up the carousel with the last remaining trades. Tony Perez, Al Oliver, Dave Ford, Larry Heisel. But then we came to the beginning part of the draft, and teams are still making last-minute trades. They can make trades during the draft, but they're making trades to get ready. And the first team would be the first team on the clock, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. And what we discovered about the Toronto Blue Jays was that they did not have a premium player in the years of 79, 80, 81, or 82 that seemed draft worthy for the first overall pick, and they wanted to make a splash. And I like to begin my drafts with a splash player, all-star, Hall of Famer, Rookie of the Year, something like that, for the Toronto Blue Jays. And so, to do this little process, we looked around at all the other teams' keepers throughout baseball and was making the rounds, making phone calls to see if any of these other teams wanted to trade any of their keeper guys. You know, and they ring the phone in, in Boston and see if Carlton Fisk or Jim Rice are available. The Red Sox just kind of laugh and that kind of thing. And, it's like Lou Whitaker and the Tigers are going, "Are you crazy? We got a whole decade of him and Trammell playing together." And, Frank White, Kansas City, like, come on, give me a break, Toronto. Give me a break. Toronto finally found a team that was willing to trade because this is what they had. They had Asselstein, Heisel, Roy Hal, and Jeff Zahn, and none of that screams first overall pick of the draft, does it? They found a team willing to trade a Hall of Famer under a unique set of circumstances. The team would be your Minnesota Twins. Decided that a Mr. Rod Carew was on the block. And this is because Rod Carew leaves the Twins for the California Angels. Now, here's an interesting little sub-story. The Angels are going to have Doug DeCinces come on board with his 82 card. And Ron Jackson, by the way, has a magnificent 82 for the Angels, hitting over 330. 330 kind of sounds like Rod Carew's lifetime batting average. So in this retelling of history, and I'm always very careful regarding Hall of Famers, to put introductory something that will at least complement what happened in Major League Baseball history. Because the Angels already are getting a 330 hitting first baseman in Ron Jackson at 82, they really don't have room for Rod Carew. Plus they have Don Baylor at DH, and they're going to get Reggie Jackson theoretically for that 82 Angel team. So I don't really think they need Rod Carew. But we know Carew doesn't stay with the Twins. So Toronto says, let's break the bank and let's see if we can get Rod Carew on a very early Toronto Blue Jay team. He would be the first Hall of Famer to join Toronto. This would be before, of course, the Blue Jays are any good. They don't start getting good until 83, 84, 85. When the guys like Lloyd Mosby, George Bell, Jesse Barfield, Tony Fernandez start joining the club. So, can the trade happen? Can they make it work? And let's take a peek at what happened in the trade. So the Toronto Blue Jays, check this out, folks. There it is. They acquired Jeff Zahn earlier in the carousel as a lefty starter from the Cubs. And lo and behold, and a bit of irony, 2 bits of irony, Jeff Zahn used to pitch for the Minnesota Twins. And even better, Zahn pitches much better in his career in the early 84, drumroll, the California Angels, the team that Rod Carew was supposed to go to anyway. So it all seemed to fit perfectly, and there will be one more caveat you'll see in the draft, and that is the Twins aren't really going to be too concerned that they lose a first baseman, because we know the Twins are going to find a very outstanding young first baseman in their system who doesn't have a lot of vowels in his last name. Figure that one out. So here's the trade. Zahn and Carew are your principals. Scott and Augustine are just 1979 players who may continue or might get replaced. We don't know yet. But Toronto does have to fork up, count them, not one, but two draft tokens, because we are talking about one of the greatest hitters in baseball history, Rod Carew. So that is the blockbuster trade that happened on the day of the draft to give Toronto and their young fan base something to shout about. They have a superstar, folks. Rod Carew's coming to Canada to play for the Blue Jays. There was one other incidental trade. The White Sox traded Francisco Barrios for Dennis Lamp. They're actually going to put Lamp in the bullpen instead of the rotation. The White Sox just had too many 1979 guys, and so they had to make a trade like this. It cost them a token, and that's very incidental. So with that, we can show you the draft and what has gone on. We are in the baseball draft. Toronto, the White Sox. We got the first 16 picks in. The first half of the draft is in the books. Let's just get started with the first overall pick in the draft. Your Toronto Blue Jays, I say. The Toronto Blue Jays have selected Rod Carew. At age 33 in 1980, Rod Carew would hit .331 for your California Angels. But now that history is going to Toronto instead. So Rod Carew goes to... I'm going to make one more quick change here on the clock. I pulled in the wrong Carew. I want the 80 Carew. It's 331. There we go. I pulled in the wrong stat sheet. Here we go. So I got to fix that. So yeah, sorry about that. I had the wrong Rod Carew in there. I gave him the 79 one. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, little technical goof there. Yeah, Rod Carew's 1980 card at age 34, where he hits .331 as a 2 first baseman and a stealer. He's the first overall pick of your Toronto Blue Jays. Next up on the clock, your Chicago White Sox, and they had a bunch of guys to consider. They considered a very young Lamar Hoyt, They also considered perhaps Ken Kravick or George Orta, bringing those guys back. The 83 White Sox team wins the West, but Harold Baines is not in the league yet. So at age 23, his 1982 season is the best of his first 3 years. Harold Baines joins the White Sox and gives them a good cornerstone outfielder. Next up, your Arizona Diamondbacks. And we're going to put this into no-brainer department. So they also took a rookie. And he really was. His first year, 82, Ryne Sandberg. Ryne Sandberg is going to play for the Arizona Diamondbacks and not the Cubs. Sorry, Cubs. All the young teams, the expansion teams, they need help. They need all the help they can get. And frankly, Sandberg, in 82 and 83 is just okay. 84 is his big year with the Cubs, of course. But Ryne Sandberg is going to the desert to be a young cornerstone player for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Next up, the Ohio Players on the clock, and they had their choice of Vida Blue, Tony Pena, Joaquin Andujar, but they could not resist having 1981 Dick Davis join a crowded outfield with a .333 batting average, and they have no place to really play him. They've got 5 outfielders in that team now, but they all hit .330 or something, and it's a pleasant problem to have. They just went for the best raw talent. And that Dick Davis card is a killer. And so 3 consecutive rookies after Rod Carew. Now with the 5th pick in the draft, the Padres return to some consistency with their current franchise, unlike the previous 4. And they take Randy Jones. They move Randy along into his 79 year. It would be Randy's last good year with them, pitching 263 innings with a 3.63 ERA. After 1979, he becomes pretty ordinary, so they decided to make him his first round pick. It's kind of like a lifetime achievement award, though. And it's only going to be for 1 year. And then after that, who knows what happens to Randy Jones? He might actually play for somebody else. All right, the Cardinals. You know, it's funny. They looked at their 82 guys the year they went to the World Series. Ozzie Smith is going to stick in San Diego with his 80 card. The Padres have demanded. So the only other Cardinal available in the World Series year would have been Willie McGee. But they decided they would go into the 81 set and get a couple rookies. Dane Orge, who has not gotten into the league yet, which is rather stunning because he always hit close to 300. But Dane Orge's 81 card at age 31, he hits 327. So finally, this big banging card gets into the league. And they also announced their 6th round pick, because you could do this if you have the rights to players in the same year. You can announce them simultaneously. John Martin becomes the 3rd and final lefty on the team as a versatile starter reliever in 1981 with a 3.42 ERA. Oh, by the way, a long time ago, the St. Louis Cardinals won a World Series for me back in the previous century, I believe. And John Martin helped that Cardinal team win that World Series. So I guess sentimentally I like John Martin. Okay, let's keep going. We're getting to Oakland, which will put us, I believe, halfway through. Does it not? 5, 6, 7. No, Oakland's number 7. Oakland also decided to fortify that tremendous pitching staff of those amazing Oakland A's that Billy Martin had. Matt Keogh, arguably his best year in 1981. He's a starter 8 with a 3.40 ERA, joining Steve McCatty, Rick Langford, and Tom Underwood. So they have 4 pitchers who can pitch 6,000 innings in the Oakland rotation, and they are not going to have a bullpen. They're just going to leave 4 empty spots and just throw complete games through the entire baseball season. Just kidding. All right. The Mets were a little bit in nowhere land with their pick. They had a bunch of pretty good choices, and they weren't bad choices, really. They could have taken John Stearns simultaneously with Doug Bear in 82. Very good seasons for both. And they still may do that, but they decided instead to go with Craig Swan and Kevin Cobell from 1979 to shore up their current rotation. They traded for Glenn Abbott in the offseason to be the number 2 starter. Craig Swan is the ace. That's 2 guys on 3 days rest. Cobell is your number 3 starter. And the number 4 starter is going to be either Pete Falcone or Tom Hausman. So the Mets have good starting pitching. They had a great offense last year. And now they're going back to pitching, trying to fortify their team. All right, next up, Colorado Rockies. Oh, we get some bang. Yeah, the bang is there. You know they'd have to make a splash with power, and they do. 1982, Jason Thompson. Hard to believe this guy played for Detroit, California, and Pittsburgh, and bounced around, because the man was just incredible. 32 homers, 100 and some walks, a 902 OPS. Why do you not lock that guy up to a big contract? He's 27 years old in 82, just has a monster year for the Pirates. They double up by also selecting Ron Reed with their 5th round pick, announced at the same time. And would you believe it, at the tender age of 39 years old, Ron Reed would have one of his best years with a 2.66 ERA. Hard to believe. And his whip is, I don't know what his whip is. Move this out of the way. 111. There we go. His whip's 111. They also get the Commissioner Award, but that doesn't happen until the end of the 1st round, so they have to wait on that. So Jason Thompson and Ron Reed doubled up for your Colorado Rockies. Pretty cool. All right, next up, with the 10th pick in the draft, your Boston Red Sox, no-brainer. No-brainer, no evaluation done. This was called in 3 seconds. Jim Rice, you have to do it. You can't look at anybody else. Wade Boggs is going to be in the league, but he has to wait. Eckersley's a Hall of Famer. He gets announced with the second choice. But Jim Rice, simply no-brainer. The obvious first pick of the Red Sox with his incredible 977 OPS, 39 homers, and 325 batting average in 1979. Red Sox aren't going anywhere. They're contending for the World Series for the fourth year in a row. Boston Red Sox. Jim Rice announced simultaneously with Dennis Eckersley. By the way, Rice is 26, Eckersley is 24. This could have just been a juggernaut. Eckersley should have been with the Red Sox 2 years ago, but Cleveland held on to him and would not relinquish him until Boston relinquished Louis Tiant, and they have. All right, we have the Giants up next on the clock. And Jack Clark would be the default pick unless somebody else shows up. And the answer was nobody else showed up. The rookie class is okay. Joe Morgan's available. He's okay. Ed Whitson's available in the same year. He's okay. But Jack Clark's 1980 year at age 24 is not to be forgotten because he's got a 900 OPS, 284 batting average, demolishes left-handed pitching in 1980. One of the greatest hitters in Strat-O-Matic versus left-handed pitching in 1980. Look out, Randy Jones. Look out, Bob Shirley, and you get the idea. The left-handed pitchers in the National League West. And Ed Whitson, acquired in the offseason, is the second choice as he had one of his best years. A 3.10 ERA, 211 innings, and I think only 7 home runs allowed, which is a really cool stat. Here's a pitcher pitching on 3 days rest in the starting rotation, does not have a home run on his card. And it's very hard to do, regardless of era you play in. And Ed Whitson does not give up homers in 1980. Hopefully that will help this Giants team. All right, we've got 5 more teams on the clock. All right, we've got a spite pick. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our first spite pick. The Cincinnati Reds are on the clock. First, I just want to say Dave Concepcion would have been a great choice. Improving Johnny Bench to his 300 card at 81 would have been a nice choice. The rookies of 81 and 82, not so much. I think, though, there was Charlie Leibrandt and Paul Moskow were okay, but nothing incredible. But in the off-season, they made a deal with Cleveland to acquire Lee Lacy, pretty much just to keep him away from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so with that, with the first pick, because he's the best player available, the best player of the ones I just mentioned, Concepcion, Fred Norman, Bump Wills, and some other rookies. And Lee Lacy is the first-round pick of the Reds, mostly just to screw over the Pittsburgh Pirates, their division rival. Lacy, it's 312. He's a double-A stealer. He's got a -2 arm in left field. He can play third base if you want him to for a few minutes, as Cincinnati hasn't ironed out third base yet since they got rid of Pete Rose and Ray Knight. So Lee Lacy could play some innings there. This also puts George Foster into designated hitter, where he's a 4. So Lee Lacy joins a speedy outfield of Brett Butler in center for Cincinnati and Ken Griffey in right. Love the move for the Reds, if for no other reason. Even if he doesn't fit perfectly, he at least screws over the Pirates, which is what the Reds are always trying to do. Those teams despise each other, folks. Despise each other. Pirates and Reds, it is ugly. It is just an intense beanball battle every time they're out there. All right, next up. Texas Rangers had a bunch of starting pitchers they were considering, including and not limited to Fergie Jenkins, John Matlack, Doc Medich, and the 1981 Danny Darwin as a starter, or Danny Darwin as a reliever in 1980. The rookie class was not particularly good either. Improving Rusty Staub didn't make a lot of sense as he's getting up there in age anyway. So they went out in the offseason to get a right-handed hitting corner outfielder, and boy, did they get one. It was Bobby Bonds, his last good year in 1979. He's 33 years old. That's going to be it, folks, because he plays in 80 and 81. He's a shell of himself. But in his last good year of 79, Bobby's a 275, 833 OPS guy with 25 homers. Can still steal some bases, still has some legs. He would play for Texas in this timeline, but in a different year. He actually played for Cleveland in '79. Now he's playing for Texas. Al Oliver never really got his Texas Rangers shot, but frankly, didn't really fit because Mickey Rivers is in center for Texas. Bonds is in right. They got Rusty Staub stuck in left field. They got Richie Zisk, a designated hitter. So there was really no room for Al Oliver in his Ranger squad, as it turns out. All right, next team on the clock after your Rangers. We have an improvement. Finally, we get a team who wants to improve a player. Let's take a look and see. The Florida Marlins, and they were doing this last year too, folks. You see this light green color? This means this player is improved. And it would be Hal McRae's best year stroking the ball in '82, 308, but it's the 27 homers, career high for Hal McRae, and an incredible 133 RBI for Hal McRae. His best year, a 910 OPS, which is better than Jack Clark. It's probably close to Jim Rice's 977, Jason Thompson's 902. And so you get the idea that making Hal McRae go from just a singles hitter into a dangerous slugger is worth the trouble for Florida. The down part of this transaction means that the Marlins have the same number of players that they started the draft with. So every time we get an improved player, in the notation here, you see this C82/8004. It means that at the end of the draft, they're going to need to get the fourth player from the 1980 card set in the token round of the draft. They got to sign a guy off the street from 1980 to be the 20th player on their team. And that could be a very scrubby guy, but that's worth getting McRae. So amazing. All right, your Minnesota Twins, and this is the answer to your trivia question of the earlier. The Walt Hriniak, a man with very few vowels in his last name. Actually, he's got a few vowels near the end of his name, but not in the beginning. But the Minnesota Twins, this is why you get rid of Rod Carew and you don't care, because you're going to go to a gentleman by the name Kent Urbick, 1982. He just does everything you could ask. 301, 848 OPS. What's really impressive is his great range at first base and his ability to crush left-handed pitching plus right-handed pitching. He's 22 years old. And now you see the Twins did the right thing. They could not hold on to Rod Carew, but instead of sending him to California, they figure he's safe in Toronto, where he won't hurt the Twins as much. So Kent Urbick, the first pick from the 82 box, they double up by announcing that Dave Goltz will be their second player chosen from that same year of 82. Goltz is no longer a starter, but he's a pretty good long man, and he'll go into a very awesome bullpen in Minnesota with Mike Marshall, John Henry Johnson, and Doug Corbett. They're going to have one of the best bullpens in baseball, and Kent Urbick. Smart stuff by the Minnesota Twins. So this has been the brightest, most intelligent moves in the draft thus far. My goodness, Kent Urbick. Kent Urbick, you could say, is better than Ron Jackson, who we talked about earlier, and he's better than Rod Carew. So there you go, Twins. And you got 2 draft tokens. So great move for your Minnesota Twins. And lastly tonight, we're going to get halfway through the draft with your Seattle Mariners. And they have the same spirit as the Florida Marlins, improving a guy because their farm system was not very good. And it is Beer Stein, our guy. Beer Stein, 1981 Beer, hit 330. Bill Stein hit 330 in 1981. He could play first, second, third, short, left, and right field. I think he can put a 330 hitter in any of those positions and be happy. 330 for Bill Stein, you got to do it. You have to do it. The alternatives were ancient players. They have Tony Perez they acquired in the offseason, Gaylord Perry, Paul Splittorff, and Frank Tavares. They do not scream first-round pick. A 330 hitter is a first-round pick, even though it is Bill Stein. We're going to pause that first half of the first round in the 1979-82 Fall League. Thanks for checking this stuff out, folks. We'll see you next time.